bring to you Reverend Dr. Kathy Hearn for our Wise Sage project of the Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation. Dr. Kathy Hearn is the manager of the School of Spiritual Leadership and also the Dean of the San Diego campus. We are honored to have her here today, and welcome, Dr. Kathy.
Thank you, Dr. Marilyn.
Begin by telling us a bit about your background, your family, a little bit about where you came from, and then move forward into your how Science of Mind has developed in your life.
All right. Let's see, I grew up in Los Angeles in the San Fernando Valley, so I always say I'm a Valley girl. And I was raised by a single mom. My parents were divorced when I was very young. And so she did a good job raising me up and put me in a private school and saw that I went to USC for university. And it was when I was at USC, and I'm an only child, and it was when I was at USC, my father had just died, which was a very strange experience. I hadn't been connected with him, but still I had deep feeling about it. And I was studying the American transcendentalists, especially Emerson, and also Eastern religion and the metaphysical, English metaphysical poets. And I was walking across the USC campus one day and had a huge opening. I think it was Emerson that prepared me to think about the oneness of life. And suddenly the universe and all of life presented itself to my awareness, and I saw my place in it. And I changed right in that moment. I thought I was going to be a high school English teacher, and suddenly that became very uninteresting to me. And so I did complete my bachelor's degree and started going to the Bodhi Tree bookstore in Los Angeles and just read one book after another on metaphysics, esoteric studies, and ultimately spirituality. And it was sometime after that that I ended up in Seattle. I met the man that I married, and we went to move to Seattle for his work. And I was walking along the street in the University District one day and saw a sign that said Academy of Universal Truth. And so I entered my first metaphysical school there, and that's the first place I heard about Ernest Holmes and the other New Thought writers. And so I was hooked. And I began spiritual study then, as well as, the various jobs in the world. And there was some time afterwards that we were transferred for David's work to Los Angeles, actually to San Diego. And a friend of mine said, why don't you become a practitioner with Terry Cole Whitaker's ministry? Because I had been studying psychology. I did a little bit of time in pre-med, and I was trying to put together spirituality, psychology, and healing. And so that being a licensed practitioner seemed to be the perfect solution. I thought Terry was a man because only men could be ministers. That's as much as I knew. And I ended up going to her church in downtown San Diego, and it was a day that she had just gone on TV in the LA market, and people were dropping balloons and cheering. And I thought, this is not like any other church I've ever been to. I think I'm home. So I had that come home feeling that so many people talk about when they come to Science of Mind. And so my spiritual life began right there consistently. And I started assisting in the youth ministry area and taking classes, and then suddenly becoming a practitioner opened up. I was on staff with Terry for a number of years running her prayer ministry. If anyone saw her television program, at the end of the program, the prayer counselors would be shown willing to receive requests for prayer and doing that prayer, and that was my team. And so after a couple of years of doing that work with Terry, she had disaffiliated from United Church of Religious Science at that time and was doing an independent ministry. And she suddenly got the idea that she should ordain some ministers. And so I was ordained at that time. And then not too long after that, Terry let go of her ministry, went off into her independent life. And I started a center in San Diego with my friends, Ron and Sandy Scott. And Ron was up in the Bay Area and Sandy was in West Hollywood. And we created an independent ministry called the Alliance of Light Ministry. And then sometime after that, we all got the idea at the same time to re-affiliate with United Church of Religious Science, which we did. So I came home. And I'll pause for a moment to see if you have a question for me.
No, I think that's very interesting. I had not known about all of that. But yeah, please continue. And I know that this gets very interesting now when you participate in, okay, so please go ahead.
So I was the senior minister of Pacific Church of Religious Science for 15 years. And we grew from, in fact, I always have to credit Sandy Scott because she said, ministry is about building the foundation brick by brick. And so that was a very important idea for me. I'm not an overnight success kind of person. I am more like build it brick by brick. And so over the 15 years, we moved from being a very small group in a little upper room in one location to a church that had maybe 700 to 1,000 people ultimately. And then for personal reasons in 2000, I actually stepped away from that ministry and had 2 years of kind of freelance ministry, speaking and teaching and counseling. And then during that time, we began to look at the organization. There was an idea that it was time for a re-enchantment within the organization. That was Dr. Roger Teal's word. And a group of us worked on creating a new vision, the Global Heart Vision, and seeking to bring forth a renewed organization because something had felt a little stuck. In fact, there had been a study that had been done that said that we were in a stage called early bureaucracy, one step away from organizational death. And so we mobilized at that time and brought forth a new model, the Global Heart Vision, and a new organizational model that was a circle with God at the center rather than, the usual organizational structure, and began to bring forth that new idea. Dr. Edward Viljoen was instrumental in that transition time. And a couple of years later, it was time to elect a spiritual leader, and I was elected, which was a miracle. But there was something satisfying about being elected to a position I helped design, so I appreciated that. And it was a time of tremendous change. With a new organizational model and bringing in new aspects to our functioning and seeking to actually create a culture that represented how we wanted to be in the world. And I consider it just such a powerful and wonderful time. We addressed a lot of things. And one of the things that we began to address then was this ongoing conversation about why were there two organizations, because there was Religious Science International and there was United Church of Religious Science. And every time I would do a new member class, people would always say, why are there two organizations? We teach the same thing. And so the energy began to build, and Dr. Jim Lockhart was a huge part of that. We had a powerful ride in an elevator one time, and he said, we ought to put this thing together. I don't remember his exact words, but that's how it began. And so we started the process of integration, and I know you have created your book that explores that. And that was a very interesting, deep, wonderful process. Dr. Ken Gordon, who was the president of International at the time, and I traveled around the country doing meetings and talking about integration. And on the inner planes, we were walking through all of the changes that have to go on, both personally and then organizationally, to bring two things together. But it was just such a dynamic and wonderful time. And the result was our integration, which I think is a fine thing. I think in I think maybe we're through the adjustment period pretty much. We feel like one organization now to me, and so I'm very happy to experience that. And I really felt that at our last convention. It felt like we were a we finally, instead of an us and them. So that was very gratifying. So yeah, we did that powerful, powerful work. And then it was time for me to complete my 10 years as community spiritual leader and give way to our new leader, Ken Gordon, who is our spiritual leader and has been. It will be 8 years for him when he completes soon. And so that brings us up to current time.
You have been a busy lady. So what, I know that there are other affiliations that you've been involved with, and so tell us a little bit about that.
Perhaps you're thinking of Association for Global New Thought. Yes, I'm not currently active with that group, but I was on the leadership council for AGNT for a number of years, and that was a very dynamic experience, and it still is. AGNT is going very strong, and it was a way to access, let's say, actually to fulfill what was part of the Global Heart vision, which is that we would start to relate to the larger world, and that we would find a way to bring science of mind into broader expression in the world. And one of the most important things was we began to consistently go to the Parliament of the World's Religions. And the first one that I attended was in Barcelona. I took my kids with me. It was really a wonderful time, both as a family and just also being there. I watched these young people turn on to the world, and so did I. It was quite wonderful.
What year was that? Do you recall?
What was that?
What year was that?
Oh, I'm not good on that sort of thing. 94, 5, something like that. Yes. So that was a powerful thing. And sequentially now, AGNT and the representative organizations go to the parliament, and we've arrived at the table of the world's religions, and that was the intention. And I'm not sure what's happening right now around all of that, but I know that will be a consistent effort. And I credit Barbara Fields, who's the director of AGNT, for doing such an incredible job. She knows everybody who is to be known. And so to connect with her and to be involved with the Association for Global New Thought through the years is to have a very rich experience and to meet countless people who are all involved in New Thought. New Thought has many expressions. So.
And what other, during your time as a minister with a center, with a church, were you affiliated with any interfaith or community organizations?
In truth, I was not too much. There were a couple of interfaith experiences that I had, but I was also married at the time and raising 2 children, so I didn't really have a lot of extra time to do those kinds of things. I would participate in ministers' meetings, but that was primarily it.
Can you tell us a little bit about the School of Spiritual Leadership and its participation, or Holmes Institute?
Yes.
And how school became a separate entity, or
right. Yes, right. There's been an evolution for some time, and Holmes Institute was created first, and some of my awareness of the history may be a little sketchy, but there was a dream and Dr. Lloyd Tupper was a carrier of this dream, that our ministers would be trained at a high level, and that they would study the way Ernest Holmes studied, which is philosophy and religion and science and psychology, so that we were having an expansive and comprehensive approach to the ways in which our principles can express. And so Holmes Institute was created, and the current evolution, Holmes Institute offers an accredited master's degree and certificate which, by the way, people can take without becoming ministers. So people who want advanced education can get a master's degree or this accredited certificate by taking these amazing classes in all those disciplines that are done, are taught by PhDs, and they're very high level people and experts in their field. They're really remarkable classes. And the accreditation of that program required that there actually be a separation between the people who have bachelor's degrees and are taking the accredited programs and those who are becoming ministers without the bachelor's degree. And we wanted to diversify our program and be able to invite more people into ministerial training, not just the ones who have had bachelor's degrees. And so that's why we have so ministerial training has two components to it. One is the online classes through Holmes Institute, these high-level academic classes in all those disciplines. And then we have what we call the regional program, the campus or primary teacher program, which is the hands-on classes or courses about how you do ministry. And so it's a very nice combination of the academics and what we call ministerial formation. And then there's a third part of the program, the practicum program, where students are actually doing work in their centers to implement what it is that they're learning. And so that's why there's a little bit of complexity, but it's actually a nicely balanced and really important program. And I'm just so thrilled to see the graduates, and I think this is true across the program. I see it primarily in San Diego, but the graduates that I've had recently are all in pulpits. They're doing very vibrant ministries, and they're doing a great job.
That's wonderful.
So I think we're training ministers at a high level, and that this is important. Yes. This is important for us to be doing.
Okay. So what do you see, where do you see the science of mind in the world now and in the future? How do you see that?
That's such an interesting question because there is so much flux and change. And we're seeing younger people, the millennials, we call them, come in and they have a different sensibility, which is, of course, appropriate because evolution is not about staying the same. And so what I see most important for us right now, our principles are of tremendous value for people to learn about the one and the oneness of life and about their creative relationship with it, you know, and actually ultimately about divine identity, because once that awareness comes, people begin to have higher thoughts of possibility for their life. They start to be motivated by love and to harness the creative power of thought to improve their own lives, but also to bring greater good wherever they are. And all of this is very important for us. And so I think that we're challenged right now to diversify the ways in which we teach and to think about the various avenues through which we want to express our principles. I'm about to convene a group to look at how ministerial education needs to begin to shift, to be more about social engagement. The young people coming in want to see that the principles that we teach are meeting the issues of the world in a way that they can engage with both. And so it's how do we transform, how do we, Reverend Deb Gordon always uses, or Dr. Deb always uses the word nimble. How can we be nimble enough to change to encompass these shifts that want to happen? So it's a very exciting time, but it feels a little bit like not being able to see too far into the future. But you know, that's the teaching, walk by faith, not by sight, right? So one step at a time.
All right, well, I appreciate the time you've taken to share with us, but I would like for you to share with your audience, our audience, perhaps some words of wisdom or just whatever you have to say as a message to our audience.
Know the truth of the one know the truth of who you are. Stand in that center. I like to call it my little patch of God. You know, stand on your little patch of God in full faith that the circumstances and the swirl of life is just that. That's just what it is. But that it never hurts, harms, or touches that inviolable wholeness that is at the center of our being. And that when we know that truth, we bring forth great good in our expression for ourselves and for our families and for ultimately for the world. I think it's really important for people to see what they're inspired to do, to live by inspiration, that it's not about shoulds anymore. Of course, we all have responsibilities and things that we have to take care of, but to consider what we're all inspired to do. What is our dharma, or what is it ours to do? What is the expression that springs naturally from who and what we are? Just like you, Dr. Marilyn, you are a shining example of everything that I'm speaking about right now, in all of the ways that you've expressed in your life and the good that you're doing, and the fact that you're doing this project right now. So I think those are my words of wisdom. Let us not be overly distressed by politics and changes and the things that swirl, and remember to stay firm in the truth of the one. That's what I would say.
Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure to meet you and have a wonderful time with you on this in this interview. Thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Marilyn Leo. I am the founder of the Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation. I trust that you have enjoyed this interview, which is part of the Wise Sage project of the archives. It is a gift of love, as is the foundation itself, and depends entirely on your generosity. We appreciate your donation in support of the preservation and availability of our science and mind history.